What's up guys, it's Mindset Performance Coach Adam Carmichael here. In today's video, you're going to be learning how to master your emotions at the poker tables. Now, over the past 8 weeks, I've been coaching 10 players through my signature poker athlete program. We focus on one skill per week and we level that skill up from a beginner all the way to an elite level. The second skill that we focused on was emotional regulation. All right, and this is a very high level skill and it's one of the most fundamental skills you need to master if you want to have a long and successful poker career. One thing's for certain, your emotions are going to interplay with your decision making on a daily, weekly, minute by minute almost basis. If you're not able to master your inner emotional states, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. You're going to struggle to put in volume. You're going to have tilt episodes where you spew off buy-ins. You're going to have all this interaction with your decision-making process because you can't get in control of your emotions. Unless you're one of the lucky people who are genetically quite calm under pressure, don't experience much emotions when you're in heightened situations, you're gonna have to do some work on this, all right? Most players have to do a lot of work on their ability to regulate their emotions. The good news is you can develop this skill. You can develop your ability to stay calm and to navigate the poker world whilst still experiencing emotions. Now, some people think you need to get to a point where you don't experience emotions, or you try to control your emotions by like overriding them with kind of strong logic and stuff like that. There is a place for that, but in all honesty, the way to think about emotions is you want to almost ride the wave, all right? I call it regulate, because regulate is you want to be able to dial up positive emotions. If you're in a good state, you want to be able to dial that up and feel more of it. And if you're in a negative state, you want to be able to dial that down, all right? Dial down the kind of the tuner to make sure you're experiencing less of it, all right? Now, the good news is there's a whole system we can go through in order to get more control, or more ability to regulate emotions at the poker tables, all right? So there are 4 concepts I want to share with you today. The first of those is emotional awareness, all right? You need to increase your awareness. It's one of those things, if we don't realize what is going on, we can't fix it, all right? We have a lot of blind spots. We often don't see what is going on, so it's really hard to fix our problems. So as a poker player, the first thing you need to do is observe yourself, watch yourself, and see what emotions you experience on a regular basis, especially the heightened negative ones, all right? For some of you, they'll be very obvious. It's tilt, it's anger, it's rage, all right? You can get aware of it and also build a profile of what it looks like for you, all right? Because every emotion has a bit of a signature, like a common signatures, but it feels different to different people, all right? So for example, if I'm frustrated, I could feel tense, or I could feel hot in my face, or I could just feel fidgety. We have different kind of physical reactions and signature feelings relative to our emotions, all right? So get clear on what are the most common negative emotions that are impacting you, all right? So watch yourself throughout the course of your days. Some of them will be subtle, like, oh, I just feel a little bit annoyed here. I feel a bit anxious. And get really, really clear on which ones are causing problems, all right? Then we need to spot the triggers, all right? So we've got these emotions. Why do we get them? Generally, we get them because something happens in our external world. Generally, at the poker tables, someone does something that we don't agree with. Your opponent hits a 2-outer. Poker gives you some bad results for a period of time. You do not like what has happened in your external world, and that causes this emotional response. We've got to observe this process and watch the trigger to response relationship. So what are your triggers? For some people, making a mistake, their own mistake is a trigger. For some people, it's their opponent making a mistake, that's a trigger. For some people, it's just losing in general, that is the trigger, all right? Then the third thing you have to do is you need to start changing your responses. This is where the magic happens. This is where you start to regain control of your emotional landscape, all right? So in simple terms, we're interacting with our environment on a consistent basis. Our senses are taking in information. That information is then getting coded, often subconsciously, and we're giving meaning to that event, which if the meaning is negative, or I don't like this, or I'm in danger in some way, it triggers an emotional response, often a negative emotional response with those examples. All right, so we have a trigger, and the meaning that we give the events creates this response. So we've got to get very, very clear on all of it, right? So when I'm working with players, we map out the whole situation. What are the emotions you're struggling with? What are the triggers that are causing that emotional response? And what is the meaning? And the meaning is the glue that holds this response together that you're given to that event, all right? We then chip away at the meaning, right? We chip away like almost like a sculptor chiseling through the stone, because the meaning is very malleable, all right? So for example, if I'm playing somebody and they hit a 2-outer on me on the river, and my meaning is, that's unfair, that shouldn't have happened, why me? That emotional response based on that meaning is going to be very visceral, all right? I'm going to feel unfair, I'm going to get angry, I'm going to get annoyed because I've given it that meaning. On the flip side, if I was able to change that meaning to this is just another 2-outer, this is just variance, then I'm going to get much less of a reaction, all right? So I won't go too deep because there's a whole process to go through that, but you need to change the meaning, all right? And then the final step is reprogram your mind. So when you're changing the meaning of events, that's done consciously. We can do that in exercises. I get my guys to do detailed worksheets to kind of break through this process, but it's all a conscious process, all right? It's like writing down stuff. Then we need to program it into our mind until it becomes a subconscious program. What does that mean? It means you've got to repeat the kind of new meaning, the new signature of what you're going to tell yourself about this event so often and so many times until it becomes a subconscious program. All right. So let's say I make a mistake at the poker tables, and that's one of my triggers, and that gets me annoyed. And I notice that. So right, okay, annoyed is my trigger, is my emotional state. The trigger is when I make a mistake. The meaning I'm giving it is, I'm an idiot. I should know better. Why did I make that mistake again? Shouldn't have done it. That's the whole meaning I'm giving it, all right? If I was able to change that meaning to, okay, I made a mistake. What can I learn from this mistake? I can learn from mistakes is the new meaning, all right? The new meaning is like, I can learn from mistakes. It's not the end of the world, all right? If I install that enough times, you will get to a point where you will make a mistake and you won't have to consciously use that process. You will actually be able to subconsciously just already do that, all right? So you won't have to constantly remind yourself of the conscious process, all right? So the reprogramming is you do enough repetition of the new meaning until it becomes inbuilt, therefore it's no longer a problem, all right? You go through this whole process of reprogramming until it becomes the default program, all right? And what's really amazing is this is how the mind works. Now, one thing which I need to have a caveat as well, just so we don't go too into the kind of weeds of the mind, we also need to realize that emotions that we experience, we need to get comfortable with them, all right? So when I'm talking to players on this concept and coaching them through it, I tell them to get very comfortable with what they're feeling. Very often as poker players, we jump to the mind, all right? So when you can't handle an emotion in your body, you jump to the mind to try and fix it. You throw in a logic statement. You try to override it with some sort of cognitive process. And the problem is, your emotions don't work that way. Your emotions are there to tell you there's a problem. I don't like this. I don't want to do this anymore. So you need to feel your emotions. You need to go back into your body, all right? So I go over a whole process with my players to show them how to go back into their body and actually to feel the emotional experience. Very often when you're able to experience an emotion without running from it, by running from it, I mean going to the mind and trying to fix things, which is what the mind does, very often we get more control of our emotional state, all right? So you go internally back into the body, all right? So there's 4 things. Increase your emotional awareness. There was spot the triggers that cause the emotional responses. It was changing your responses and the meaning you're giving them, and then reprogramming that in until it becomes a new subconscious program. And that's it. If you target every emotion from that lens, you can make amazing progress, all right? Now, as I've worked with 10 players at the same time, we had tons of different emotions that we were trying to override, right? Probably 8 or 9 different ones that we're working on. And I've learned some really good lessons in this process about what are the common problems that cause players to struggle to regulate their emotions. Now, one of the kind of common bits of advice you'll hear is speak more support to yourself, or change your inner voice, or don't be so critical on yourself, all right? Good intentions, but not very helpful advice, all right? In reality, the way we speak to ourselves is very specific. It's almost like very certain voices, all right? So we have, like, I call it the inner critic and an inner coach. But the inner critic has certain modes of speaking, all right? So for one mode of the inner critic is to blame other people. Another mode of the inner critic is to catastrophize. Catastrophizing would be like, oh no, I've lost today. What happens if I lose next week, and next month, and the next year? It almost like blows things up to bigger and bigger situations. Right? They're very different voices, but they're kind of negative in our dialogues. On the flip side, we have positive voices. Some positive voices are putting things into perspective. Some positive voices are the ability to plan ahead and think about how to solve problems. All right, so different inner voices and inner coaches that we need to become aware of. Now, as I went through the program, I got basically the players to create a profile of what inner voices they use negative and also the positive ones. Right, there's a whole process of questionnaires I went through to do this. But what's really interesting is the first lesson I learned, self-blame was the most common inner critic voice. All right, so of the players I was working with, a lot of players were blaming themselves when they made mistakes. They were very harsh on themselves. All right, so when they're in high stress scenarios and things didn't go well, they blame themselves. All right. Now, on one side, there's a level of accountability. Okay, at least you're not blaming the external world. But a lot of times it was negative. It was having a real negative effect because they were not allowing themselves to make mistakes. Once you know self-blame is your model of what you're kind of causing a lot of your emotional tension, say I make a mistake and I blame myself, we can start to change the meaning around being more forgiving, being more accepting, being more supportive to ourselves. Right? We can really change the dialogue so we can watch ourselves. So I got the players for the next week to watch how many times they blame themselves. And it was loads. They blame themselves over and over and over. And as a result, it was causing all these emotional situations. Once you know the root cause and you know self-blame's the inner dialogue I'm using, which is causing these emotional reactions, we can now start to tackle it at the root, all right? And we come up with solutions to that problem, all right? Often around acceptance and kind of allowing yourself to make mistakes. All right, second lesson I learned is a missing link for a lot of good players is their inability to positively reframe events as they are happening. All right, so when something negative happens, it's really hard for a lot of players to see the good in that. All right, so like say you're on a downswing and 6 months from now, you know it's going to be no big deal. You learned lots of lessons and it was, if anything, a learning experience. However, a lot of players in the heat of a battle, losing a session or on a downswing, they struggle to see a positive reframe. All right, a reframe meaning how can this help me down the line? All right, so this is a skill the players had to work on. We had to really work on how can we see the positive in the moment. When you make a mistake right here, right now, how can that be a positive thing? And it's a positive if it opens up a learning opportunity, if it, to get better. If you're losing right now and you're having a losing session after losing session, how can that be a positive right here, right now? Well, it's making me be more resilient. It's making me, basically build my mental toughness and my ability to overcome adversity. It's removing my attachment from results and allowing me to double down on performance. It's allowing me to think of the things I do control rather than things I don't control, so I can create attachment or distance from the external things. All right, so there's lots of lessons we can learn, and that's one of the skills we need to work on. All right, and the third lesson I learned from my poker athletes was even if you've had tilt problems your whole life, you can train yourself to regulate your emotions in real time. All right, some of the players were coming in and they're going, Adam, I've had this issue for years and years. I've never been able to overcome it. All right, but once you broke it down to exactly what the framework was, once they understood the root cause of their emotional issue and they approached it from a new lens with a very strategic plan, they were able to regulate the emotions in real time. So the feedback I've had from that module was amazing in terms of how much they've learned about their ability to regulate any emotion in real time. Now, this isn't like a pass-fail situation. As you go through life, you are going to experience emotions, all right? Unless you want to spend 10,000 hours meditating and go live in the woods or something, or in the Himalayan mountains, there's a good chance you're going to be interacting with your environment in ways that stimulate negative emotions. The goal is not to stop that process completely. The goal is to be in control during that, to feel like even in the heat of battle, even when you're feeling all these emotions, to still be in control. All right, to still be able to show up and put your volume in, to still be able to play good poker and make good decisions, even though this guy on the table is really pissing you off right now. You want that level of I'm feeling these emotions because I'm a human being, but I'm in control, all right? And getting more and more control over time, all right? And you can train the skill to a very high level very quickly once you understand how it works. Now, before the 10 players worked on their emotional regulation for the full week, they took a pre-module assessment, all right? This was a detailed questionnaire that gave them a score for their current level of their ability to regulate their emotions. Now, this is really good to do because it gives you a baseline, and as you're working on something, as you're training the skill, as you're trying to improve, you can look back and go, wait a second, I started here, how much have I improved? So you can see the work you're putting in, is it working, is it not? All right, now after just 1 week, all right, imagine like some of these emotions players have had for years, like 5 years, 10 years, maybe longer, some of their whole life, some of these emotions take some time shifting, right? So we're not going to get like 100% increase. However, the average player across the whole 10 players saw 14% improvement in their ability to regulate their emotions in just 1 week. How can you get a 14% increase in 1 week? Because you know how it works. Once you know how your emotions work, you can observe them in real time. You can see behind the system. It's almost like when you can see the coding of your own brain and your own physiology, it gives you access points to change stuff. All right, so super pleased how that module went, and I really think it's one of the game-changing skill sets to be able to regulate your emotions. Once you go deep here, this was a deep module. We definitely didn't leave any stone unturned. We shared a lot of successes together, and also people who are very vulnerable and share the things that they were struggling with. But if you're willing to go deep on it and you understand how it works, it's a game changer. All right, these emotions aren't this complicated thing that you're trying to override with logic. You understand the whole process and you can tackle it at the right points. All right, so here's some of the success stories I had from this module. This one is from Jason, and he said, one of my biggest challenges before joining the program was being overly critical of myself. Like I said, self-blame is the most common inner critic, which has been a problem my whole life. This would often lead me to make mistakes while I was playing, which would ruin my day. Knowing the difference between a training and performance mindset has been the biggest result for me. I still allow myself to be very critical when I study, but during a session, I've learned to turn the critical self off and let myself play, which has been a game changer. How many of you can relate to that? You're too critical of yourself. You judge yourself over and over. You're constantly playing, trying to think and trying to play your best poker, and your mind's like, idiot, why do you do that? Oh, I shouldn't have done that. Shouldn't have played that. You're ruminating on past hands. You can't concentrate on the hand in front of you. Imagine if you knew that was happening and you could actually stop that process. You could literally switch that process off and allow yourself just play poker. All right, so what does Jason say? Switch off the critical self-talk, let myself play, which has been a game changer. Let yourself play. What does that mean? It means emptying the mind. It means stopping the judgment. He still says he allows his critical self during his studying, all right? So I talk about this in a different module, which is the presence module, where basically you allow yourself to go into a performance mindset, which is very empty, very creative, very in the flow of the game, and you save the training mindset, which is the critical, judging, kind of over-analyzing side of you for your study sessions, all right? So you have two modes you go into, but in game, you turn off that critical voice and allow yourself to play, all right? And this has a direct effect on your emotions, all right? So when he's being critical of himself, he's also having an emotional reaction based on that inner talk, all right? So by shutting that off, it's been able to have huge progress in a short space of time. All right, so then we had Paul. Paul said, I had general tilt and anger issues going into the program. I would often default to negative perspectives when faced with setbacks and challenges, and had a hard time not letting bad sessions spill over into my life and relationships. I knew the reward to mastering my anger and tilt issues would be massive, but I always fell short and felt somehow helpless at times. That I would always be victim to my emotions when things inevitably would go wrong. No matter how good you are or think you are, poker will put you through the grinder. Now, if you're not the 1% born with the mental toughness and calmness that is required to be a professional player, then you have to put some serious work into developing these traits. The Poker Athlete program is the platform to do exactly that. The lessons and perspectives gained were invaluable, and not just for my mental game, but for my life in general. As a 32-year-old, this is something I seriously wish I had done when I was 21. All right, so some of the things there, massive tilt and anger issues, and felt like he was going to be a slave to them, victim to your emotions your whole life. How many of you guys can relate to that? You've had so many emotional flare-ups throughout your life, you just can't imagine a life where that's not true. You can't imagine not experiencing heightened emotions and being out of control. This was Paul, all right? And Paul's 32 now, and now he's at the point where he actually feels like he's in control. He felt like he would always be a victim of his emotions and things would inevitably go wrong. Now, he doesn't believe that at all because he's in control of the operating system. And once you understand how your emotions work, you go deep into the emotional profiles, it's game changing, all right? And for Paul, he wishes he had done it when he was 21. So many of you guys are 21, jump ahead of the game and get in there early. All right, but it's one of those things we can't neglect. If you go through your poker career and you're emotional, by that I mean you're overreactive to situations, you're constantly tilting or responding negatively, or your emotions just wipe you out in terms of they stop you putting in volume, you're burning out easily, you're just struggling to constantly stay positive, optimistic, in a good frame of mind whilst playing, it's going to cost you a lot. And often it's going to cost you the whole thing. By the whole thing, I mean the players, very, very talented players who don't learn to control their emotions, either end up break-even players at best, or losing players, or they quit the game because they can't handle the stress that comes with it. All right. So emotional regulation is a key skill you need to train. So if you're someone who wants to start training your emotional regulation alongside 7 other skills needed for elite poker performance, then this opportunity could be for you. I'm reopening my Poker Athlete program for 10 new players. All right, so if you want to be one of those, click on the link in the description, go through the application process. I'll be reading through those and selecting the 10 most suitable candidates to go through the program, which will be starting the first week of February. All right, so there'll be 10 of us going through the program together. It's gonna be 8 weeks long, and we're gonna be doing a skill per week. We're gonna be digging down on it together as a group. It's gonna be live coachings, training modules, training programs relative to your skill level. It's gonna be an interactive program in a group environment. If that sounds like a fit for you, apply now, because the spots will be going quickly, and I look forward to seeing you on the inside. If that's not a fit for you right now, smash the like button before you go, and I'll see you in the next YouTube video.